It all started on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are cursed in my experience. They're like Mondays that got too confident. I was under the hood of a 2009 Subaru Outback in front of a cozy little house on Maple Drive, half listening to an audiobook about emotional intelligence while trying to wrestle a rusted bolt into submission. That's when I first saw her Mara. Now, to be clear, I'm not easily distracted. I've worked on cars in snowstorms through barking dogs, even with a toddler tap dancing on my foot. But when Mara walked out onto the porch with a pitcher of iced tea, and that looked like she had a story for every wrinkle she didn't have, well, even the bolt stopped resisting. She was 50, she told me later, 50 going on 29, with better boundaries. Thirsty, she asked, holding the pitcher out like an olive branch. I nodded more for hydration than diplomacy, but I won't say no. We sat on her porch steps and she poured me a glass. Her laugh came easy, which I appreciated. I've worked around too many grumpy clients who think every mechanic's a crook until proven otherwise. So what's wrong with the beast? She asked, gesturing toward her Subaru. Starters hanging on by a prayer and a pack of zip ties. I'll fix her up. Mara tilted her head. And what about you? What about me? I asked suddenly, unsure if she meant emotionally, spiritually, or mechanically. You look like a guy who doesn't just fix cars. You fix things. I try, I said, but only things with torquey specs. She smiled, then stood. Well, Mr. Fix-It, I'm trusting you with my baby. I've had that car longer than my second marriage. That made me laugh. That a compliment or a warning? Bit of both, she said over her shoulder. I spent the next hour under the hood, but my mind kept drifting back to her, how she moved with the ease of someone who had long stopped caring what people thought, but still dressed like it mattered to her. There was a quiet confidence in the way she smiled, like she'd already made peace with the worst things life could throw at her. When I finally finished, I packed up my tools, wiped my hands on a rag, and went to the porch. All done. She'll start smoother than a politician at a fundraiser. Mara handed me a check already written out fair price. Most people hover and negotiate. She trusted. That did something funny to my chest. I thanked her, turned to leave, and that's when she said it. Wait, she called out. I paused. You're the first in my 50 years to whom I will give my number. I blinked. Wait, what? She smiled, not a flirty smile, not a forced one either, a real smile. You heard me. Don't make me repeat it. I have pride. I laughed because what else could I do? I've had numbers scrawled on receipts, napkins, one time on a windshield, but never like this, never from someone like her. Okay, I said, but you should know I'm not great at texting. I'm not great at waiting around, she replied. I punched her number into my phone like it was a secret code. We stood there for a moment, two people with no script, no expectations, and nothing to lose. Call me if your starter acts up, I said, or if yours does, she shot back. As I walked away, I realized something strange. I was grinning. I hadn't smiled like that since, well, I couldn't remember when. Maybe this Tuesday wasn't cursed after all. That night, I called my best friend Benny. Benny runs a junkyard, but talks like a philosophy major. You think it's weird, I asked, that a woman in her 50s gave me her number? Yeah, he snorted. Man, women in their 50s know what they want. You're lucky. At least she's not still figuring it out on social media. True, I said. You like her. I thought about it. I don't know. I like how I feel around her. That's rarer than a mint Camaro. Don't mess it up. I didn't sleep much that night. My brain kept running scenarios. Was she just being friendly? Flirty? Did she really mean anything by it? The next morning she texted, Maricar's working great. So am I. What about you? Smooth, confident, simple. My fingers hovered over my phone, unsure how to reply without sounding like a dork. I sent back, running smooth. Thanks for the check and the number. Seconds later, checks bounce. My interest doesn't. Okay, that was real. She meant it. I spent the next few days pretending I wasn't checking my phone every half hour. I even started Googling what to do on a casual date that's not a date but might become one. Spoiler alert, the internet is no help. By Friday, I cracked. I asked if she wanted to get coffee. She said, no, let's get ice cream instead. She said coffee dates are for interviews. We met at Scooped, a local place with wild flavors like honey bacon and avocado swirl. She got mint chocolate chip. I got whatever she was having. We sat in the sun, eating like kids, laughing like old friends. She told me about her job. She ran a local bookstore. Of course she did. She smelled like books in summer. We were interrupted by her friend Janice, a firecracker of a woman who looked like she'd run 5 yoga classes before lunch and judge your posture before saying hello. "This him?" Janice asked. Mara smirked. "Yes, be nice." Janice gave me a look like I was being sized up for battle. "You break her heart, I break your kneecaps." "Fair," I said. And somehow, just like that, I was in her world, a world of women who had lived lost and weren't scared of much anymore. It was intimidating, but it was also real. Later, walking her to her car, she stopped and looked at me. "You're different," she said. "So are you. I think I like that," she added. Then, as casually as the first time she spoke to me, "Want to come to my bookstore next week? We're having an open mic night, poetry, music, some wine." I nodded. "Only if you read something." "I might, but only if you show up." And with that, she was gone. Back in my truck, I sat in silence for a moment. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was the start of something, and I had no idea where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, I wanted to find out. The next morning, I pulled into my shop with a mind buzzing from last night. I barely slept, not because of the heat, not because of the raccoons fighting outside my window like it was WrestleMania, but because of her Evelyn. Her voice kept echoing in my head. "You're the first in my 50 years to whom I'll give my number." That kind of line sticks with you, especially when it comes from someone who carries herself like she wrote the manual on confidence with a smile that could calm a thunderstorm. I'd met plenty of clients over the years, but none who disarmed me like she did. And now I had her number and her car still sitting in Bay 3. I was halfway through my morning coffee lukewarm and way too sweet because Manny messed up the sugar to caffeine ratio again when my phone buzzed. A known number. I answered trying to sound casual, though I almost choked on the second ring. "Morning, grease monkey," said her voice playful. "Evelyn, unless another woman gave you her number last night," she said amused. "I was wondering if I could swing by today and grab something from my car." "Sure, it's still here." "Perfect, I'll bring donuts, but only if you've got good coffee." "Divine good?" I asked, looking regretfully at my barely coffee. She laughed. "See you in 30. Exactly 28 minutes later, Evelyn walked in with a box of donuts in the kind of energy that made the shop feel like it had windows. She was wearing jeans and a simple white blouse, her hair pulled back, and somehow she still managed to look like she belonged on a magazine cover for How to Live Your Best Life After 50. "This place smells like oil and existential dread," she said, stepping around a puddle of coolant. "That's our signature aroma," I said, wiping my hands. "Pairs well with regret in transmission fluid." She opened the donut box. "Pick one, but if you touch the Boston cream, I'll bite your hand." Manny came out of the back and froze. "Whoa, this is Evelyn," I introduced. "Evelyn, this is Manny, assistant mechanic, donut thief, and the reason our inventory system has crashed twice." "Hey," Manny said, eyeing the box. "Nice to meet you." She handed him a glazed, "You work with this guy and haven't quit yet." "You deserve a raise." Manny grinned. "I like her already." I handed her the key to her old Saab. Um, "Want help?" She popped the trunk and pulled out a small suitcase. "Nah, just grabbing some things. I'm staying with my sister until my car is ready." "Where's that?" "Just north of Maple. She has 3 kids and a husband who thinks laundry is a mythical creature." "You're brave," I said. She paused, looking at me. "You know, brave is one of those words people use when you're doing something stupid, but with confidence." I laughed. She didn't. That night, I found myself staring at her, contacting my phone. Evelyn T. Classic car, classic charm. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to say, just that I didn't want the conversation from earlier to be the last. So I texted, "You made the shop 87% brighter today." Manny said 93, but he's always exaggerating. She replied within seconds, "Tell Manny he's my favorite. You're a close second." I stared at the screen for a while, then typed, "How about dinner this week, just as friends or enemies, your call." The dots danced, then paused, then danced again. Finally, dinner as frenemies sounds perfect. Thursday, I'll drive unless you still have my car hostage. I smiled like an idiot for 5 full minutes, then realized I still had coolant on my shirt. Thursday came faster than I expected. I spent half the day pretending I wasn't stressed, which involved me snapping at poor Manny every time he misplaced a wrench. He finally called me out on it. Dude, he said, are you okay? You've checked that carburetor like 3 times. Either it's flirting back or you need a nap. I'm going to dinner tonight, I admitted. He raised an eyebrow. With her? I nodded. Well, he said, pulling off his gloves, better shave and use real cologne this time, not the stuff in the bathroom that says motor fresh. Duly noted. Evelyn picked me up in her sister's car, a practical little hybrid that looked like it had never known chaos. You clean up well, she said as I got in. So do you, I said, which felt lame, but she smiled anyway. We ended up at this quirky diner with 50s decor, neon lights, and waiters on roller skates. The whole thing felt like a time warp, and Evelyn fit right in. Over meatloaf and milkshakes, she told me about her job at the museum, her failed attempt at painting, and how she once broke her ankle trying goat yoga. Goat yoga, I asked. It's a thing, she said defensively. Tiny goats jump on your back while you do downward dog. It's adorable and mildly traumatic. I was laughing so hard I almost choked on my fries. Then she got quiet. Can I tell you something? When she said, sure. I haven't done this in a long time, gone out, talked like this, felt seen. I looked at her, this woman who seemed so sure of herself, suddenly unsure. I get that, I said. I don't do this either, mostly just cars and the occasional argument with my cat. You have a cat. Named Carl. He judges me a lot. That made her laugh again. We sat in the car afterward for a while, the streetlights flickering like we were in a movie. She turned to me. This was fun. It was, I said. We should do it again. She smiled. You're still second favorite, but you're closing the gap. And just like that, something shifted, not dramatically, not like in the movies where violins swell, but something real, something honest. I went to bed that night with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I had no idea what this was or where it was going, but I knew one thing: I was no longer just the guy who fixed her car. There are moments in life when you realize you're no longer steering the wheel. You're in the passenger seat watching someone else drive straight into a sunset or maybe a cliff. That someone in my case was Diane. It had been a week since the infamous wrench drop moment, a week since she gave me her number with that mischievous half smile. I had called her 2 days later, just enough time to not seem desperate, not too long to seem uninterested. She didn't answer at first. I left a voicemail that I rehearsed like a teenager. She called back 20 minutes later, laughing, as she said, "You sound nervous. I like that." We made plans to meet, not a date, she insisted. Just two adults having good conversation, possibly sharing mediocre coffee. She texted that Saturday morning. I found myself parked outside a quirky cafe called The Daily Grind, nestled between an antique bookstore and a laundromat that hadn't changed its signage since 1983. Diane arrived in a crimson-red convertible that looked too flashy for the neighborhood and somehow exactly right for her. She stepped out, sunglasses perched on her head, hair windswept, wearing a leather jacket over a Beatles tee. I felt underdressed in my plain Henley. "Hope you like bad coffee and better pastries," she said as we walked in. "Or do you only do motor oil and sarcasm?" "I dabble in both," I replied, still trying to keep up with her pace literally and metaphorically. We grabbed a corner table. She ordered chamomile tea. I asked for the strongest coffee they had. Conversation flowed easily at first: music, movies, travel. She'd been to Rome, Buenos Aires, and Tokyo before turning 30. I hadn't been outside California in 5 years. She listened intently, though, even when I talked about rebuilding carburetors and running my uncle's auto shop. But then things shifted. "So, Jake," she said, twirling a spoon in her tea, "why aren't you married? I nearly choked on my scone." "Well, that's direct. I'm 50, I don't have time to play the long game," she said with a smile. "And if I'm spending my Saturday with you, I'd like to know what you're made of." I told her the truth, that I had one long relationship years ago that ended with a note on the kitchen table, that I buried myself in work after that, That somewhere along the way, the idea of building something real with someone felt like it belonged to people more stable. Her face softened. I get it, she said. My ex-husband left me on our 17th anniversary for his yoga instructor. I took up wine tasting in sarcasm. We laughed. It wasn't sad laughter. It was the kind of shared humor that builds trust. Then came the surprise twist. I want to show you something, she said. You game where my place. My internal alarms blared, but she must have seen the hesitation in my eyes because she added, relax, I just need a second opinion on a garage remodel. You do that kind of stuff, right? I nodded slowly, realizing this woman had a knack for keeping me guessing. Diane's house, a large Mediterranean-style place with ivy-covered walls, stood proudly in an upscale neighborhood I'd only driven through. Inside, it smelled like vanilla candles and eucalyptus. The garage was filled with a mix of tools, camping gear, and dusty boxes labeled high school memories and divorce detox. As I examined the garage walls, Diane pulled out an old stereo and played a Fleetwood Mac album. Helps with visualization, she said. Somewhere between measuring studs and dodging spiderwebs, we started dancing, not full-on waltz, just a sway, a light goofy movement to everywhere. She twirled herself, bumped into a shelf, and knocked over a box of old books. Guess that's one way to renovate, I said, laughing, as I picked up the mess. Among the fallen items was a photo of a much younger Diane with a man and a small child. My daughter, she said quietly, picking it up. Emily, she's studying in Chicago, barely calls typical 20-something. There was a pause. You miss her? I asked gently. Every day, she replied. But I raised her to be brave, independent, maybe too well. We stood in silence for a moment. Then Diane turned to me. Jake, you're easy to be around. That's rare. My heart did a somersault it hadn't done in years. That night ended with a pizza on her front porch. She made me promise I wouldn't read too much into it. I'm not ready for romance, she said, slicing a mushroom off her slice. But I am ready for company, good company. I nodded, unsure of where I stood, but certain I wanted to be there wherever there was. The next day at the garage, my friend Marvin, 60 grumpy and allergic to optimism, noticed the change. You look like you caught feelings, he said while changing brake pads. Maybe, I admitted. Well, don't drop them too fast, he said. People are complicated, especially ones who know what they want. I kept thinking about that because Diane wasn't playing games. She knew what she wanted: connection company, no pressure, no labels. But was I okay with that? Later that week, I got a call from Emily, her daughter. Are you Jake? She asked with no preamble. Yes. My mom talks about you a lot. I'm flying in next weekend, thought you should know. Click. I stared at my phone. New chapter or new chaos. One thing was clear. Diane had given me her number, but she was also giving me a front row seat to a life far messier and more wonderful than I ever expected, and I was still deciding whether I could keep up. The rain had started while I was still sitting in the cab of my truck, hands on the steering wheel, debating whether I should knock on her door again or just go home. Claire had texted me earlier that morning. Want to stop by around 4? I've got something to show you. Nothing scary, I promise. I was already halfway to her place before I realized I was nervous. When she opened the door, she was barefoot, wearing jeans and a Rolling Stones t-shirt, hair up in a bun with a pencil sticking out of it. There was a kind of softness to her that afternoon, like the armor she usually wore was hanging up somewhere behind her. You came? She said as if surprised. I'm starting to think you invite me just to test me, I joked. Claire smirked. Maybe I do. Come on in. I made iced tea. We sat at her tiny kitchen table, which was covered with old newspapers, engine parts, a sketch pad, and for some reason a rubber chicken. I didn't ask. She poured tea, but I noticed she wasn't really looking at me. Something was up. So what's the something you wanted to show me? Instead of answering, she stood, went to a drawer and pulled out a dusty binder. She dropped it on the table in front of me. My daughter, she said quietly. She's getting married in October, and she wants me to help plan the wedding. I've been avoiding it. I opened the binder. It was full of clippings, photos, notes. Claire's handwriting scrawled across pages. Ask DJ if fog machine is too much. Caitlin hates daisies. Don't cry when she walks down the aisle. This is beautiful, I said. It's chaos, she replied. I haven't been part of Caitlin's life like I should have been, and now she wants me to play mother of the bride like nothing happened. You want to make it right? Claire's eyes glistened a little. She nodded, then she laughed too quickly, trying to push the emotion away. God, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. Because I'm here and I'm listening. She looked at me for a long second. That's new, she said. I helped her clean up the table while she washed out glasses. I noticed a photo on her fridge of a much younger Claire standing next to a teenage girl with the same defiant smile. She looks like you, I said. Poor kid, Claire muttered. No, I mean it. She looks strong. Claire turned back, drying her hands. You'd like her. She's smart, sharp-tongued, though gets that from her father. That's when the knock came. Claire frowned, expecting someone. Nope. She opened the door and I watched her body tense. A man stood there, probably in his late 50s, tan, well-dressed, with a confident smirk, like he was walking into a business meeting he already won. Claire, he said smoothly. Claire stepped outside, pulling the door mostly shut. I couldn't hear much, just muffled voices and the occasional sharp syllable. Then I heard her say louder, No, Brad, you don't just get to show up and act like it's 20 years ago. The ex-husband. I moved to the door but stopped. This wasn't my business. At least it wasn't until Claire suddenly opened the door wider and gestured to me. Brad, meet Mike. Mike, this is Caitlin's father. Brad looked me over, then extended a hand like we were at a formal dinner. Nice to meet you, he said flatly. I shook it. You too. You fixed Claire's car or something, he asked. Yeah, I replied, and sometimes I listen when she needs it. Brad didn't like that. He gave a tight nod, turned back to Claire. I'll call Caitlin, he said. You should too before she starts thinking you flaked again. And just like that, he was gone. Claire sighed. I hate that he still knows where the pressure points are. You okay? Nope, but I will be. We sat on her porch for a long while. Claire lit a cigarette but didn't smoke. It just held it between her fingers, staring off into the trees like they had the answers. You ever feel like you're trying to be someone better, but the past keeps dragging its feet behind you? She asked. Every day, I said. She nodded. I want Caitlin to be proud of me. She already is, or she wouldn't have asked you to be part of her wedding. Claire smiled, eyes glassy again. You're good with words, dangerous. I'm good with tools, too. If you need help building something for the wedding, I'm in. She gave a soft laugh. You might regret saying that. That night, I got a text from her around midnight. Thank you for showing up, for listening, for not running when things get messy. I typed a response and deleted it 3 times before settling on, messy's fine, just means it's real. If you'd asked me a month ago where I'd be now, I'd have probably said something like, under a car covered in grease and half listening to sports radio. That was before Helen, before a 50-year-old woman in a red leather jacket walked into my garage and turned my organized little chaos into a circus of feelings, phone calls, late-night coffee, and something dangerously close to hope. Helen wasn't just another woman. She wasn't even just the woman who gave me her number. She was unexpected, the kind of story no one believes until they live it, and I was living it. The week after our late-night grocery store adventure, things got weird. Started small. I came into the shop Monday morning still half asleep, and there was a box of donuts on the front counter. No note, no receipt, just a box. I asked Paul, my assistant, if he brought them. He shrugged and said, I don't eat carbs. Do I look like a guy who buys pink frosted donuts? Fair. An hour later, I got a text from Helen. Thought you and your guys could use some sugar. Consider it breakfast diplomacy. I don't know what breakfast diplomacy meant, but I ate 3 donuts and forgot to be skeptical. Later that day, as I was replacing a brake rotor, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Helen. What's your stance on musicals, hypothetically? I replied, if there's a car chase and someone sings on top of it, I'm in. She sent back a laughing emoji, then a few minutes later, dinner Saturday, no car chases, but maybe some jazz. That was the thing about Helen. She didn't ask, she invited, challenged, nudged, like she knew I was the kind of guy who'd talk myself out of something if she left me too much room. Saturday came. She picked the place, a small jazz club tucked behind a dry cleaner on 8th, the kind of spot you'd never find unless someone whispered the location into your ear like a secret. She looked not 50. She looked like someone who knew herself, the kind of woman who made turning 50 seem like a milestone instead of a warning. We talked about her late husband, Andrew, about the 30 years they'd shared, about how being alone felt like a habit she wasn't ready to give up, until me about my mom, who still texts me photos of squirrels every other day just to check in. And then in the middle of her sipping a gin and tonic and teasing me about my fear of shellfish, someone approached the table, a man probably around my age, clean-shaven, confident, wearing a tight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Helen," she stiffened. "Nathan, wow, hi." He turned to me and stuck out a hand. "I'm her son." I nearly choked on my club soda. Helen blinked hard. "Nathan, this is Adam. We work together." "Oh yeah," Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Because it looked like you were flirting over scallops." I held up my hands. "No scallops here. I'm allergic." Helen, to her credit, didn't flinch. "Nathan, we're catching up, that's all." Nathan didn't respond, just looked at me, then back at her. "I should call you more," he said quietly. "I didn't know you were moving on." He left before she could respond. We sat in silence for a while. Then she looked at me, eyes glistening, and said, "He's a good kid, but I wasn't supposed to date anyone. That wasn't part of the post-Andrew plan." I swallowed. "Was I?" She smiled. "No, you're a plot twist." The next few days were tense. She needed space. I gave it to her, sort of. I may have accidentally driven by her neighborhood once, okay twice, but in my defense, it was on the way to the parts store. When she finally called, it was to ask if I could look at her neighbor's engine. "She's convinced her Subaru is possessed," Helen said, "but I think she just flooded it." That was her version of an olive branch. So I showed up wrench in hand, ready to talk engines or feelings, whichever came first. And that's when I met Judy. If Helen was elegance in a leather jacket, Judy was chaos in orthopedic sandals. She talked nonstop, offered me a banana muffin she insisted had healing properties, and told me I had honest mechanic eyes. I had no idea what that meant, but the car was fine. It needed a new battery terminal and some tough love. As I packed up, Judy leaned in and whispered, "She likes you, but she's scared." I nodded. "Me too." The next few weeks were a dance, one step forward, two steps sideways. Helen invited me to a book club filled with terrifyingly sharp women. I helped her install a new kitchen faucet, which turned into a 3-hour debate over water pressure and garlic cloves. She met my mom, who pretended not to be thrilled, but immediately followed her on Instagram. Things were real and messy and good. And then Helen got sick. Nothing dramatic, a stomach bug or maybe stress. But I found myself driving her to urgent care at midnight, holding her hand, reading ingredient labels on ginger ale bottles, and sitting on a plastic chair while she dozed off. And somewhere in that quiet, sterile hallway, I realized I wasn't just fixing cars anymore. I was showing up for her. When she got better, we sat in her backyard drinking sun tea and watching the wind bully the neighbor's garden gnome. She turned to me and said, "I was never afraid of being alone, but I think I'm more afraid of missing something real." I nodded. "I think we both found something real." She reached for my hand. "Adam, I didn't expect you, but I'm glad you were the first." I smiled. "First what?" She grinned. "First in 50 years to get my number and maybe my heart." We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. We just sat there, two weird souls who collided by accident, watching the sun fade and the porch light flicker on. And that's how I ended up here writing this down, because sometimes the best stories don't start with fireworks. Sometimes they start with a busted radiator, a borrowed wrench, and a woman who knew her own mind and gave me a chance to know it. The story of Mike and Mara delivers a heartfelt lesson about the beauty of unexpected connections and the courage to embrace life's surprises no matter the stage of life. Mara's bold decision to share her number with Mike, a mechanic who stumbled into her world while fixing her car, wasn't just a gesture. It was a declaration of openness to new possibilities, despite past pain and societal expectations. Their evolving bond, built on shared iced tea, laughter, and honest conversations, teaches us that meaningful relationships don't require grand gestures, but thrive on genuine moments of vulnerability and trust. Mike's journey from cautious reserve to embracing the messy, real connection with Mara shows that life's richest experiences often come when we let go of fear and say yes to the unknown. The challenges they face, gossip, family tensions, and passed out shadows highlight that true connection demands resilience and the willingness to show up even when it's scary. This story resonates deeply because it reminds us that at any age we can find hope, rediscover joy, and build something real if we dare to take a chance on someone who sees us for who we are. What's a moment when you took a leap into the unknown and found something real? Share your story in the comments. We can't wait to hear it. If Mike and Mara's tale touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and join our Life Unscripted community for more stories that inspire courage and connection. Don't miss out. Let's keep discovering life's unexpected magic together.